Here we are.
Okay, here we are. I clicked
Yeah,
record. So, we're really here now.
we're here.
Hi. Yep.
You got
I am Beth Reese, founder of Yogini's Yoga for Youth and host of the OHMazing Way podcast. And I am so grateful and have just already had this beautiful, moving, inspiring conversation with my guest today, Athea Davis Rubin. Hi, Athea. How are you?
Hey there. And, I'm a mix of all the emotions, honestly. Joy and, deep sadness all mixed together in one based on our conversation earlier. And which is a great place to be, holding those two emotions at one time and connecting with you today. So all that said, it is Friday. Can I say that?
You
It is
can.
Happy Freak Out and Love Friday. So,
Oh, I love it. I
yeah.
love it. And already you remind me of even thinking about feeling tones, how we can identify things as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, right? And even sometimes there are moments when, at least for me, that sometimes sadness will at first come up as unpleasant, but then sometimes it's just there as neutral, or even just to be with it and invite it for tea. I mean, I'm not crazy. I'm not going to say it's super pleasant, but just a way to sit and be with emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, friends, we have Athea and I are going to be having a conversation today about relationships with children and loved ones, and managing grief and sadness, and just really having a big space container for it all. So thanks for dropping in and being with us today. So let's go ahead and take a moment to drop in and get grounded. And as I often say, I don't know about you, maybe there's a little spilt milk in your morning, or just something that we can put aside for now and really come into this moment together, and be open, courageous, vulnerable listeners. So if you're sitting somewhere where you can uncross your legs and arms, and just quietly rest your hands in your laps if that feels available to you. Again, if you're driving, don't do that. And if you're in a space where you can softly close your eyes, or at least lower your gaze, if that feels good for you, great. If fully closing your eyes for you, also great. Really, whatever feels best for you. And as you come into this sort of quiet space, just take a moment and know that if you're sitting, know that you're sitting. If you're driving, know that you're driving. Really be with that. If you're listening and folding laundry or planting a garden, know that you're doing that. Really be there. And let's shift our attention to our breath and breathe in. Let's breathe out with a nice sigh. If you like, breathe in through your nose this next breath in. Maybe imagine smelling a flower for flower power. It helps us breathe in more expansively. Breathing out with another sigh. Letting your shoulders soften, your eyes soften, your inner ears soften. One last breath, breathing in. And as you breathe out, slowly noticing your body sitting where it's sitting, your feet where they are, and really be connected to this moment. And when you're ready, softly open your eyes. It's always so good to drop in with you and to our listeners, with our listeners. Thank you. So, Athea, we have known each other for a while.
Yes.
And we've known each other in lots of capacities. I first met Athea. She attended one of our Yogini's Yoga for Youth trainings. She is one of our just superstar, and not ours, she is a superstar yoga, mindfulness teacher, expert extraordinaire. She is a registered children's yoga teacher with Yoga Alliance at the 500 level, which means she has studied a whole lot of yoga and has the experience part, which also means she's taught over 1,000 hours, which is a few, right?
Just a few.
Just a few. She's a registered children's yoga teacher with Yoginos, and some of the ways we've known each other, we were in a program where we were able to teach yoga and mindfulness, health and wellness in some urban schools here in Houston. We have worked together on creating programs for schools. And then a big part of what we just do is really love and support each other with what we're up to, and really both of us being so passionate and committed to bringing mindfulness, self-regulation to humans. Like, I'll just open it up there. Athea is also one of those people in my life who is just this awesome sauce, sparkling, energetic ball of light. I was sharing with her earlier. She has such beautiful discipline around her work, her communication, and it is so inspiring to me. And I just think of you all the time, and really pull towards myself your love and support also of what I'm up to. So thank you. And I'm so grateful to walk this path with you.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you. All right. And so let me just read the more formal description of what Athea is up to. And so you can get the broadest picture available. And then in the show notes, of course, there'll be all the many ways you can find her and get a hold of her, work with her. I know you'll want to. Athea Davis is a mindfulness expert, health and wellness educator, and youth mentor. She's the author of Today's Gonna Be Awesome Sauce, Daily Meditations for Youth, Parents, and Families. Athea owns Soul Sense Yoga, a mindfully infused education and leadership company where she leads live mindfulness trainings and digital courses for leaders, educators, and parents. She lives with her superhero love family in Houston, Texas, and is dedicated to spreading the awesome sauce sparkle here, there, and everywhere. Mm-hmm. And Athea, when I think of, and as we were speaking about earlier about superhero love, there's, on one hand, we can think of like the moments when it's just, smiles and fireworks and that sort of thing. And superhero love is really about depth and breadth and space for it all.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you tell us more about that?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So, if you love superheroes like my family and I do, and I was just talking about this today, and it's like whether you like DC or you like Marvel, when do superheroes come into play, right? They come into play when there is a huge challenge, and they come in from sort of these, like, from the outskirts coming in to help everybody work together and to ultimately take, where there's friction, there's challenge, where people aren't getting along, and to help people, get together in a way where they're working together, to pull out, it could be the bad guy, but to pull out that negative thought, to pull out the negative energy, to pull out that road that we may be walking down where we're separating ourselves. And they come in to say, wait a minute, there's something more beautiful here, something more loving and amazing and great. And hold up, it's called superhero love. And you may be disagreeing with me right now. And you may look differently from me right now. You may have a different political viewpoint right now. You may even believe differently than me. But you know what? We have something in common. All of us do. We are human brothers and sisters. And so superhero love helps us see that, that we are in this big pot on this big, beautiful earth together. And in fact, like, yes, we are so similar, and at the same time, we are different. And it's that our differences help us elevate each other because we can learn from each other, no matter how different that person perspective may be. And the fact is, Beth, it's hard. It's not easy, right? There's always that drama in the superhero films, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, gotta have it.
Yeah. So like Cliff Notes version, superhero love is about taking different ways of being, perspectives, and really bringing them together in a whole. Yeah.
I love that. And, and thinking about, of course, there's yoga on the mat, and then with the Amazing Way, and we often talk about yoga off the mat. Part of that is the way that we come together to connect. Of course, yoga means to connect, unite. Yeah. With all, as you say, Athea, so beautifully, with all of our brothers and sisters. How can we even put aside those differences and see into one another's eyes the beautiful humanity and the beautiful connection that we do share. So I love how you've set that up. And then, I know, and thinking about how this looks like on the court in real life. Mm-hmm. And I know there's so many, I'm sure a few experiences come to your mind of what you might share, but what's an experience, maybe even, I know you mentioned your son, Kane, he's growing up, and what's an example of what superhero love looks like with you and Kane and your recently expanding family?
Yes, no, thank you. So now in my current family, I have two kiddos. My older one is 13 and my younger one's 5.5. But before I got married in what year is this? 2019, 2018, 2017. Whew, I have to take a minute. It all blends together. But Kane and I were on our own for a long time. I was in a prior marriage for many years, and my previous spouse was an alcoholic, and lots of issues arise with alcoholism, and we ended up getting a divorce. Going through that course, after the divorce, he really slid deep into his alcoholism, and I think Kane was around 5 at the time. So again, Kane's 13 now. He was around 5 at the time that we separated, we divorced, and he dove deeper into his alcoholism. But a few years after that, he just went down a really dark path and ended up taking his own life when Kane was in, I think he was 8, in the 3rd grade. And that experience, that whole experience of being so committed to family and to love and to loving someone no matter what, and then ultimately having to come to the point with courage and bravery and say, you know what, I love you and I love this family, but I have an obligation and a duty to raise Kane, my older son, in a different kind of environment. Like this family pattern of alcoholism and this dynamic, it stops here. And that was so hard. And I did that from a deep, deep place of love, even though my prior husband, my prior spouse, didn't see that at the time, didn't see that. And there was a lot of turmoil involved when you're intimately connected like that and you're separating and you're going through divorce. You share, a child together. A lot of stuff comes to the surface, our own emotional baggage and our own issues. It's all out. It's like we're a wrestling rink, or a great battle in a sense, right? And we're having this battle together. And ultimately, for me during that time, I didn't call it superhero love at the time, but it was almost like I was developing an understanding of what that is and how to practice it through using yoga and mindfulness practices, and discovered that I didn't have to devalue myself and what I believed and what I believed was possible for my older one by simply staying with someone and trying to fix something, that I could love them and give them freedom and wholeness by saying, wait a minute, we need to part here. And I love you that much. And I love this much that's what we need to do. And sometimes like superhero love like that, it's about making tough decisions too. And it's tuning into, that deep wisdom within ourselves to look at, to make sure that our intention, our motive, our motivation is coming from that place. that it's coming from a place of, am I loving? Am I being freed? Is freedom here? Am I practicing that as a value? Am I practicing wholeness as a value? So that's where that I guess the beginnings of superhero love started to take effect, because it was a hard practice to, here I was on a day-to-day basis meeting this great big shadow in my life when I'm having to communicate with Kane's father at the time, who was going through, deep denial about what his problems were. And it's hard to explain. Like, it almost feels like you live in a different world, and I know just from the research that most people know someone that's had some issue with addiction. It could be alcoholism, it could be drugs, it could be, shopping. The thing is that we've been touched by it in some way, whether it's someone that we've been intimately connected to within our family, our own children. But here I was, was married to this person, deeply loved them, and yet they almost morphed into someone else after the divorce, going deeper into their alcoholism. And I really learned a lot about boundaries, and setting boundaries, and self-love, and also practicing really listening what that other person was saying. Like, at the time, it felt like he was my greatest enemy, but he was also my greatest teacher, because he taught me everything I know about really standing for loving someone no matter what, right? When someone can tear you down or call you multiple names and be, abusive with their language, can you still love that person? Can you take and understand that there's some other dynamic going on, some other psychological dynamic going on inside, and see, that that's not really who they are, that's not really their essence, and keep tuning into that.
Yeah. And what I also hear you saying is, it isn't that you were sort of standing by, accepting it, engaging with it. It's that a phrase often used, detached with love, right? Like, you
Yes.
created this stand for yourself, and
Yes.
were able to still see this person as a human being worthy of love, who is hurting, who is
Exactly.
acting out in a way out of his own life's challenges. Really, really beautiful. What a stand.
And I want to say, Beth, it wasn't just like detaching with love. It was also, sometimes you'd engage with it, right? And it's the mess of, you'd engage with it. And then the aspect of mindfulness and yoga and using those practices would help me become aware and self-aware to see, oh, that doesn't feel good here on the inside. And then detaching with love, as you were saying. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think, I know for me, one of the things, and I feel like I learn more about it every day, is really noticing and tuning into what my body is telling me, and what sensation can tell me about if I'm, whether it's upset or sad or angry. And so then I can learn to manage it. So I imagine in that process, you and knowing you, were very connected and working on that, right? To really be connected to your body and what it was sharing with you about the experience.
Yes, definitely. Just learning. I mean, I think one of the things I first noticed, speaking of the body and communicate and learning that new way of communication, because it's really becoming aware and present to different sensations in your body, is I described to my prior spouse, I said, I don't know who I am anymore. And it feels like my heart has, 1,000 bricks on top of it. Like, I just have a hardened heart. And it just felt that heavy. And I said, I know I can't live like this. And it was ultimately a choice of life or death. That's where I was. It was like life or death. And I chose life. And life at that time meant that I had to say, I can't be in this family anymore. And it was so painful, because I'm so loyal and so committed and to love. And I just, because there's a part that says, oh, you're a failure. How can you break up your family? And it was life or death. And I had a duty to, be a different way, a different model for Kane. And not knowing what would happen from, dissolving that. I had no idea that it would end up, him going down that course. But it was ultimately practicing self-love in a way that I wanted my older son to know, to value himself in a way that,
Absolutely. And Athea, would you be willing to talk a little bit about, I know you and Kane have, a beautiful relationship and an evolving one. He's hitting the teen years, and we've talked a little bit about that at our calls. Like, can I talk to you? Could you share with us, what are some of the ways that you help teach this work to Kane? And the second half, we'll learn more about how you share it to the masses, which you're just brilliant at. But in the home world, right? What is it like in the home, and empowering Kane to feel the feelings? What does that look like?
Great question. I love this quote by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he says, we teach through behavior, not words. And I'm a wordsmith. I love words and huge affirmation person. But, what he's saying in there is that we have to model what we wish to see out in the world. It's like that Gandhi quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. And mainly that is how I teach him. I get that question a lot, like, how does Kane, does he practice all these things that you do and that you teach? And he does, but it doesn't look like he's on a yoga mat doing postures. Though he's had his fair share of doing that. But because I take this work on in a way that I could communicate, here's a really tangible way, for parents, and something that recently just happened. So here we go. I'll share this story. As we're preparing to go to camp, we both have meltdowns. And we're supposed to be like in the space of like joy and excitement, and it's our one-on-one time, and we're going to drive to the hill country, and he's got his trunk ready, and I walk into his room, and two things I asked him to do. He's 13, remember? Okay, so it is this kind of interesting years. He didn't do. It was like throw an old pillow away and like an old air mattress away, and he didn't do them. And I said, okay, I asked you to do this, go throw it away, and then I'll help you with your trunk. And there was resistance, and he's like, growling, and I'm growling, and I'm like, okay, I can't engage in this right now. So I'm going to remove myself from this conversation. And I did, and that was just one tiny example. And I go to the kitchen, and I am calming myself down by just taking some breaths and being in my own space, not being around that. And ultimately, he comes back to me and says, you know what? I am really sorry that I said what I said. I can imagine that you're frustrated because of X, Y, and Z. So what I'm getting at is that there's an emotional intelligence here. I'm hoping that you're hearing that through what I'm trying to share. And he knows that. What's funny is when Kane is asked this question, he'll often say, oh, I don't do, that stuff my mom does. But he does. That's who he is. You see what I'm saying? So it's already like ingrained in him. You're shaking, yeah. So
I'm nodding. I'm not. Yeah, you can't hear me nodding. I'm nodding. It
took practice to get there. It took all those times to say, hey, I see you're angry right now. Let's take some breaths together. Or, oh my gosh, I completely overreacted. I'm sorry, can we start over? And I should have done it. It's just having that constant communication and being authentic and seeing, authentic in the way that I can be vulnerable. I can share I don't know everything, that you are a teacher to me as much as I'm your mom. I'm your mom, and I'm going to lay down, some guidelines, but you're teaching me, and I've got to come back and say, I just wasn't very skillful in that moment. And here's why, and here's what I think could have happened. And you add that up over the years, not that we're at a stopping point, but you see that they take on these kinds of things in their behavior. And I see it when he's stressed, when he gets angry, he might start regulating himself by doing mindful breathing, but he's not saying I'm going to be doing mindful breathing. It's an ingrained habit because he's practiced it so long, right? But does he do it every single time? No. I mean, I'm going to say a good proportion, his emotional intelligence is pretty great. And then there's that mix of I'm a teenager and growly sometimes.
For sure. And I think what I'm also seeing and hearing from a lot of people and guests and like yourself is, and so maybe this is something for listeners to, part of this conversation to really pull towards yourself, is that it isn't being quote unquote perfect and like we're walking around breathing and never getting upset or never having, a moment. And what it is putting a language to, as the adult, what we're experiencing, to unpacking it, to being honest, to naming the feelings, naming what you're going through, and to say, like, I love that, like, I wasn't very skillful right there. And, when I have my moments where I feel like, I lose it and I have to say, whoa, like, that's not who I want to be. And I'll excuse myself. And then to come back and talk to them about it. So it's also not this like, weird thing. And it helps put it in a space where we can be honest and talk about our feelings, reflect on them, and then also start to problem solve, like, well, how could I handle that differently next time? Mm-hmm. And so we're all, same with my 3 kids, like just constantly learning and sharing and being real about it.
Exactly.
But
and then I think too, and then him seeing me in the practice, is like the most important piece. No matter how many experiences he's had with me, going to family yoga, doing postures together, practicing different, mindful breathing exercises, those have all been key. Of course they have. But then in the like practicality of it and how does it look in, in family, to underscore that, yes, he's had an experience, but he sees me do the practice. He sees me, you mentioned discipline. He sees me in the discipline of the practice. And it could look messy sometimes and it can look beautiful sometimes. Yeah.
And maybe it's all beautiful.
Yeah, all beautiful.
Great. Well, Athea, let's pause there.
Okay.
And then we'll take a break. And when we come back, definitely want to hear how and share with people about how you are taking this practice, this discipline, and really making a difference in our community and beyond, around the world. So we will be right back.
Okay, sounds good.